This is Ashley, and today I'm going to show you how you can manipulate your Cocoa Daisy cut files so they cut on a size other than 12 by 12. So to start with, I opened up the 12 by 12 chevron background that came with the March 2014 kit, and you can see it's already sized to fit on a 12 by 12 paper. So if you want to print it, let's just use 8.5 by 11 for an example. You can put in a custom setting over here if you want to change your canvas size to 8 by 8 or 6 by 6 or 6 by 8 or whatever other size you want to use. Or if you want to cut 8.5 by 11, you can just click on the letter option here underneath this little red box window on the top right, and it will automatically resize the canvas to 8.5 by 11. So doing this is going to change just the size that it cuts on, and it's not going to cut on all this matte area that lies outside of the canvas size. So it's going to cut only on the red lines that appear on the white canvas background, and you can grab the background and drag it to move it over a little bit, so you don't end up with a larger white gap where there's uncut areas on this side and a cut area on this side. Now for a file like this where the pieces overlap, you can either just cut it as is and just trim it down and just let some of the little pieces are just going to be little notches out of the side. I've done that before. I like the way it looks, but I like kind of wonky, hand cut, used looking kind of things. If you prefer something a little neater and cleaner, you can there's a few options. You can go to File, Preferences, up here, Defaults, and then Cut to Edge of Page. If that is checked off like mine is, it does exactly what it sounds like. The Cameo blade is actually going to cut right to the edge, right off the edge of the page. So these cuts will actually extend past the edge of the page. So instead of getting a little chevron that is only cut to like 1/8 of an inch or a 1/16 of an inch or whatever it is to the edge of the page, it will actually cut right off the edge of the page. So all these little pieces will be nicked out of the page. If you want to manipulate this by hand, you can right click and then select Ungroup and wait, and you can see that it has turned every single one of those little chevrons into its own item, which means that you can go in, select one. Let's just zoom in so we can see what we're doing here. Okay, that should be nice and clear. So here we are at the edge of the page where the white background is what will be cut, and the gray background is what's not going to be on your 8.5 by 11 background. It's not going to be cut by the machine. The blade's not going to go over there. So I've selected one of these little chevrons. It's hanging off the edge of the page, and I'm going to press delete. And so that's removed it. So if you do this, you might want to be careful to open this up and save it as a second file, like altered or something like that, or just at least keep your original file that you've already traced and everything like I have on this one. Keep it somewhere safe, because I've done this so many times and it's so frustrating where you go in and make changes and you accidentally save it and then your original file is lost. Of course you can always download it from Cocoa Daisy again, but it's just nice to have it ready to go and saved. So that's one option where we just resize it and just slide it over, and you can change it a little bit if you need to. Okay, so what if you have a pattern like this bow pattern that was the free cut file from February? You can see here I've opened it up. This is what the file should look like once you have it all traced and ready to go, and it's on a 12 by 12 background. But say you want to cut it again on 8.5 by 11. So I actually scrapbook 8.5 by 11 right now is kind of my default size. I just printed these, or cut them, on 12 by 12 cardstock, and then I just cut them down by hand. I just put them into my, I just have a cheap, inexpensive American Crafts, with a little zippy blade on the side that you move down, and I just put it in and just kind of lined it up and cut it down. But if you only have the capabilities of cutting something smaller and you want to make sure this cuts nicely, set your page size for 8.5 by 11 like I have now. And then, because these are like partial bows that are sort of off the edge over here and over there. Like, I like the way this looks. I would probably just cut it down like this, but if you want it nicely centered, you can go up here to this little shapes lined up icon, and we have to, oops, I hadn't grouped this together. Make sure your bows are all grouped together before you do this. So click on it, it's all one shape, and you can just click center to page, and you can see that now the bows are perfectly centered on the 8.5 by 11 canvas. You have a nice symmetrical distribution of the bows. Pattern repeats nicely, but just because of the nature of this cut file, the way the sizes worked out, the tops of the bows and the bottoms of the bows just touch the tops and bottoms of the page. So if you have a file like this, you might want to resize it a little tiny bit. So you click the resize window, it looks like a little square being dragged apart. Click on lock aspect ratio before you do anything else. This is going to keep the width and the height of the file in proportion to each other. So if you change one, it's not going to compress or make it look compressed or stretched out in the other direction. And then for height, see, it is just below 11 inches. You could just put in, I don't know, I just experiment 10.5, and it just shrinks it down just a little tiny bit. So you have that little tiny bit of margin at the top and the bottom. It's still centered. It's centered side to side. It looks like the bows are a little bit off kilter over here, so you might just want to just with your arrow key nudge them over. So these little tails, it's probably just the tail on the side's a little bit longer than on that side. The tails aren't touching the edge of the page. And there you go. So again, you can do this for any size page. This is just how you can do it for 8.5 by 11.